Mr. Zaire,
Present.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes,
Mr. Horn. Okay, Mr. Davidson, or is that Mr. Horn?
yes,
Present.
Mr. Davidson's present.
Okay. Dr. Alexandrovich. Ms. Kozersky.
Oh, Dr. Alexandrovich is here.
Oh, good. And Ms. Kozersky's here.
Here.
And Ms. Schroeder,
Yes.
Mr. Bossman,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Brown, John Ketzenberger,
Yes.
Vice Chair Etzler, and I am here. So that does seem like to be a quorum. I'd like to ask Kevin to cover meeting logistics for in-person and remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Graham. Good afternoon to those attending online. All participants will be muted when they join the meeting, but participants will be able to address the board during the open forum portion of the meeting towards the end. We do ask you to identify yourself when speaking. For those joining us via Teams, if you have a question or a technical issue during the meeting, please use the raise hand or chat feature. Participants must only send chat messages to the host. To access the raise hand and chat feature, at the top of your screen, depending on your device, you'll see a menu bar, and you may have to touch your screen for the menu bar to pop up on a mobile device. At the beginning of that menu, there's a chat icon, which you can click on to show the chat dialog box. You should also see the raise hand option. Please utilize the raise hand or chat features if you have any questions or comments, and you'll be called upon at the appropriate time. If any members of the media have joined us via Teams, please utilize the chat feature or email media@idem.in.gov if you have any questions. If you wish to speak during the rulemaking hearing portion of today's meeting, please fill out an appearance card using the forms link provided in the chat. You will be called upon at the appropriate time to give brief testimony. Only meeting attendees who have filled out the form will be called upon to speak. For those in the room today, I would remind board members to please speak up so that everyone attending the meeting online are able to hear. For those who may be answering questions in today's meeting, please also repeat the questions prior to providing a response. I will now turn the meeting back over to our board chair.
Thank you, Kevin. Our first order of business today is the approval of the summary of the December 18, 2025 board meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the summary as presented? Okay, we can proceed. First of all, do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Better late than never on that aye. It has
Thank you,
approved.
Mr. Chairman.
As
Thank you, Mr.
presented.
Chairman. I'm a long way away.
We appreciate that. Okay, we will have two item reports and we will start with Sir Woods.
All right, thanks so much, Chairman Graham. Really appreciate it. And thanks to members of the Environmental Rules Board. I just had a few quick things that I wanted to mention in terms of some activities that IDEM's undertaken, a few areas that I think we've shared with the board previously. To thank you for being here. I know we got a couple important rulemakings, several report outs. Your work on the work groups related to both fees and implementation of deregulatory and red tape reduction opportunities under several Governor Braun's executive orders. Thank you for the work that's happened since our December meeting. I want to share a few things that are happening at IDEM that I think are really exciting. There's a lot underway that we've undertaken even since your last December meeting, and I want to just reflect on a few of those items. One meeting I think we've talked about previously about how IDEM operates 4 statutory boards and commissions that are very important, and the Environmental Rules Board also plays a critical role providing independent rulemaking advice to the agency. But we also are redoubling our efforts to make sure that we're informing our federal counterparts at US EPA. And recently got some good news from our counterparts at EPA about a couple of key committees where we now have not only folks from IDEM who are going to have a seat at the table to shape EPA science on some key areas, but also a number of Hoosiers that are now serving. So I wanted to share that last year we kind of put out a challenge to our team and said, hey, you know, if we know that sometimes when people complain about IDEM's rules that we can usually point to the federal government, what are we doing about it? That means filing comments and thinking about petitions for rulemaking and thinking about opportunities to modernize our federal environmental laws, but also there's an alphabet soup of EPA advisory committees, and maybe we need to have a seat at that table. So in the last month, we've actually got two announcements. One is EPA's Clean Air Scientific Advisory Committee that advises the agency on how and where to set the NAAQS standards for criteria of traditional air pollutants like ozone and particulate matter. 7-member panel created under the Clean Air Act dating back to the 1970s. So there's 7 members, and there's actually 2 folks on there currently got named by Administrator Zeldin from state agencies. One of them from MIDEM, Dr. Fodi Kapadaris, who works with our Office of Air Quality in the Air Permits Division. And then more recently, the EPA Science Advisory Board, which I know Chairman Graham is familiar with, announced their new roster of members, so 37 new members on that board. But we have not only a member of our Office of Water Quality, Dr. Jit Weir, is serving there, but actually have 4 Hoosiers, which is more than any other state. So folks from Notre Dame and the private sector. And so an opportunity to really shape that. That board was created by Congress in 1978 to advise the agency on, frankly, the science that goes into all those rules under all federal environmental statutes, whether it be air, land, or water. So a great opportunity to have a seat at the table. I wanted to underscore the importance, I think, that we obviously think the board provides to us, but also in turn, the role that we want to play in shaping future environmental policy at the federal level. A couple of things I just wanted to flag for you all. One is we've got in the audience Samantha Nunnery, who is our small business ombudsperson. This is a kind of unique role that's required under Section 507 of the Federal Clean Air Act, but also under Title 13 as a state of Indiana state law, to have, especially for Clean Air Act stationary sources, to have a dedicated person that is providing technical assistance and small business environmental assistance to ensure compliance with what can sometimes be arcane requirements under the Clean Air Act, but also other state and federal environmental laws. Samantha serves in this really critical role, and one where we're kind of relaunching that effort. And with that, we'll have a compliance advisory panel. It's kind of been on the books for a while, but it's been a little bit defunct here. That I think in some ways can help advise the board as it relates to small entity compliance with the rules that you all are considering. But she's also launching a new effort with newsletters and some social media outreach and distribution lists and a broader effort around what we're calling internally crossroads to compliance, trying to make sure we're meeting the smallest entities in the state that have to comply with IDEM or EPA rules, making sure that we're meeting where they're at and helping to translate those rules into, for the farmers for their agricultural liaison work, for the small entities that may have various challenges. So really excited about relaunching that effort that we'll be undertaking over the next few months, and one that I think will allow us to be serving all the customers that ultimately need to be in compliance with our regulations. I wanted to just give you a few quick updates on a few other executive order matters that have happened since December 18th. We issued a couple of reports at the very end of last year, one being about implementation of Executive Order 2538. So this was related to looking at environmental rules to make sure that they were the right size, that they were not unduly burdensome, or that they were improving the environment based on the best available science and law. So I know the work group that's been working on that effort, I think, has seen that report, but a pretty extensive both compilation of some areas that we're looking at, excerpts from comments that we received from others, our game plan in implementing not only that executive order, but several others. Similarly, we issued a report pursuant to a 2025 piece of legislation, Senate Enrolled Act 103, which had asked us to look at and talk to US EPA about opportunities to address persistent ozone non-attainment issues in Northwest Indiana outside of Chicago, where both parts of Lake and Porter County have been in a non-attainment for ozone national ambient air quality standards for a number of years. And as a result, have both requirements for stationary sources and offsets and an inspection and maintenance program for mobile sources that I think there's bipartisan agreement. We'd love to not have those if we can either get the area into attainment or work creatively to utilize tools for regulatory relief under the Clean Air Act. So we did issue a fairly extensive report outlining a lot of those options, and we've had a lot of subsequent conversations with our counterparts at the EPA about how to pursue some of those tools. So just wanted to flag those reports in case they're helpful for the board's efforts. I want to give you one other update. So December 18th meeting, I think you all had finally approved our, after several years of effort and a lot of direction from our state legislature, our coal combustion residual permitting program. So just wanted to make sure you knew that we are soon going to be submitting an application to EPA to hopefully be either the 6th or 7th state that is given primacy over that program. We were back in DC a couple weeks ago, met with the entire congressional delegation and EPA's Office of Land and Emergency Management, and a lot of enthusiasm. Our program will be far and away the largest in the country. We've got more coal combustion residual sites than any other state. So a lot of work to be done, but also looking at standing up a new section and really dedicating resources to make sure that program is good and robust. ensures that we're getting resolution into the lifetime of that program. So wanted to make sure you had an update and knew that your work over the last couple of years on that front was being utilized by the agency. And we got such a great response that in fact, Representative Mark Messmer had a meeting later that day with EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin because it's budget season. And so he was making the rounds on Capitol Hill and he said, "Can you promise to approve IDEM's program very quickly?" And the administrator said, "Approved." Then he also asked for more money. So we're hoping that we can make sure we can get adequate resources to consider the size of that program for any federal grant dollars that are available. And then just wanted to mention a couple other items that I think we've got underway that I thought may be of interest to the board. One being, I think, another work group that's been working on potential red tape reduction opportunities. I've heard about this, but an effort where we are likely to be bringing to you both large and small opportunities for streamlining the administrative code across water and land and air really over the next 3 years, which would be a concerted effort for us. So one of Governor Braun's executive orders technically doesn't apply to IDEM because it relates to agencies that have rules that need to be readopted. And all of our rules, for the most part, have been readopted recently, but we are complying with the spirit of that executive order and really undertaking a pretty thorough look, starting with our water administrative code. So I know folks have maybe gotten a glimpse into that, but I do think that will be a substantial set of potential rules that will streamline, modernize, in some cases look at things that should be codified, things that don't need to be necessarily in our administrative code, things that be clear, but also in some cases just opportunities for making sure that we've got a modern administrative code that also matches with a number of changes that the General Assembly made this last legislative session around Senate Enrolled Act 277. So happy to share more on that end. I think there's been a lot written about it, but that bill was in many ways the most comprehensive rewrite of Title 13 and frankly of any state environmental code in the country that modernizes a lot of those provisions, streamlines a lot of things that have been done by this board as well as IDEM in the past. They no longer need to be a forward-moving shall, but also a lot of just pure cleanup. Most of it boring. It doesn't change much of our day-to-day work at IDEM. We still have very broad authority for working with you on developing rules and standards, but also taking enforcement and compliance actions, research, monitoring, and various other tools in the toolbox that we utilize every day. But streamlining a lot of other things that I think at times create potential risk and allows us to focus on getting the most environmental bang for the buck for the people of Indiana. We also have another effort underway that I didn't want to flag in case folks have thoughts. Similar to the effort we undertook for Executive Order 2538 on environmental regulation. All agencies are being asked to look at various programs they have for professional licensing. So at IDEM, those include certifications and operator licenses for things like wastewater and drinking water operators, underground storage tanks and asbestos contractors. And so we are, I think, seeking public input ahead of a review that we'll be conducting between now and the summer, and ultimately report out later this year about whether or not those programs we're requiring the right number of hours, that the test is hard enough, and are there things that other states are doing to ensure that we don't have any unnecessary barriers to those important roles, and that we're striking that right balance between environment and public health, but also having people who are certified to do those jobs. And so I think there's an opportunity there, and we're doing some work looking at what other states have done, but also want to ask the public, including folks who have those certifications and licenses. So I think we'll probably have more to report later this year on that end, but just want to give you a sense that it's part of a executive branch-wide effort to make sure that we don't have unnecessary barriers in the form of education requirements that need to exist or unnecessary hoops to jump through, but we all are guaranteeing that we have folks serving in those roles that are really important. And then just wanted to mention, I guess, 3 other things that we may have talked about, 2 other things we've talked about previously, but in addition to our review of the administrative code and other efforts, we also are undertaking and get sort of our own volition, but a review of non-rule policies that we've got on the books for a number of years at IDEM. We've got about 100 of those. And just as a reminder, our rulemaking process at IDEM, working through the Environmental Rules Board, is very, very vigorous and takes the better part of a year and requires us to talk to you and take a lot of public comment. Non-rule policies, sometimes we use guidance documents, is a little bit less rigorous. We still have to notify you, I think, for a certain number of days, and there's an opportunity for public comment. We've got a lot of these guidance documents and non-rule policies that have been on the books for decades, and some of them serve us really well. They provide interpretation, help to understand our rules. In other cases, it's more of a user's guide, and in some cases, they're being overtaken by events, so they're outdated or can be consolidated. So we think of those about 100 non-rule policies. Some of them can be moved to our website and might be better utilized there. Some might be able to be rescinded, some can be consolidated. So we will likely be coming back to you with a package of non-rule policy changes and consolidations that hopefully make working with our agency even easier for all members of the public. And then just one last area I wanted to flag for you is we continue our efforts to really engage the federal government in addition to those advisory committees through a lot of written comments, both by us and with our sister agencies that we partnered with folks inside our energy and natural resources vertical with the Indiana State Department of Agriculture on comments on everything from how to define waters of the United States to coal combustion residual changes in EPA, to how to develop maximum contaminant limits under the Safe Drinking Water Act for pollutants like perchlorate that derive from rocket fuel and fireworks, because not that we necessarily care about rocket fuel and fireworks, but we care about how EPA develops maximum contaminant levels under the Safe Drinking Water Act. So our team has been really hard at work filing comments almost on a weekly basis on a lot of substantive issues at EPA, and I think we have also taken the opportunity to help inform an interagency process even before EPA proposes some of those rules. So for example, we recently had White House meetings on greenhouse gas regulations and steam electric effluent limitation guidelines and comments on e-manifest for Resource Conservation Recovery Act waste issues. So I wanted to make sure you knew that we continue our efforts to try to make sure that those federal rules, many of which are implemented by IDEM, are appropriate, protect the environment, but also that we're helping shape them so they serve the state of Indiana well. So that's all I have to report. I'm being long-winded as I usually am. I apologize. But really wanted to thank you all for the agenda today and have me answer any questions you may have before we turn things over to Billy.
Sure. Questions or comments for the commissioner from the board?
I do have a question on the licensure. Will you be soliciting comments from the public and the regulated community?
We are. Something there is to take roughly 30 days of comments. This is not, a sort of a discretionary thing for us. That will be up on our website. I think we're going to try to also send that to distribution lists of, for example, drinking water operators and folks who serve in those functions now who may have experienced how our process works or may have some insight for us. So that's our plan, is to hopefully get some feedback from folks again.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? I have one. My ears perked up when you mentioned the small business compliance officer or advocate or whatever it is. When I was working in Washington, there was a whole group called the SBA Advocacy Office, and they used to come to OMB and collaborate with us as we reviewed rules and that sort of thing. Does the state of Indiana have an analog to the SBA advocate?
So great question. I may defer to Samantha, make sure to get you more information in detail, but some similarities. So this role was established under the Clean Air Act and state law, is and will be in the future the point of contact listed on all of our rules. So any small entity that has questions about regulations can reach out to the small business ombudsperson. They also interact both with other state folks who serve in a similar capacity in environmental agencies, as well as with the SBA Office of Advocacy, who continues to do great work in filing comments on a lot of EPA and other federal agency rules. There are a lot of roundtables to help understand. And so I know Samantha's been participating actively in some of those roundtables. And then actually is going to step into a role as the Region 5, so the Midwestern EPA kind of point of contact for those efforts on the environmental side. We also have, I think, under our state regulatory requirements, Indiana Economic Development Corporation point of contact as well for regulatory matters to help also channel, I think, both small and large entity interest in notification about various rule changes that may affect different entities. So a couple different processes, not exactly akin to the Small Business Administration Office of Advocacy, but kind of some similar themes to make sure they've got somebody fighting for them and then looking out for at least notifying them when there are regulatory changes that may affect small entities.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other questions? Okay, Billy, what do we have on our rulemaking report?
Good afternoon. My name is Billy Franklin. I'm Inspection Chief over Road Development in the Office of Legal Counsel. Currently, we have our next board meeting tentatively scheduled for July 9th, 2026. At our next meeting, we anticipate presenting a few rules for both preliminary and final adoption. We will be presenting public water supply and national ambient air quality standards for final adoption, along with open burning for preliminary adoption. We will also present an interim rule for lower reef vapor pressure. In addition to the rule presentations, we are also planning to have a staff member from the Office of Land Quality to present on how we implement CCR. That is all I have for right now. I'm available if you have any questions.
Comments or questions for Billy? Thank you so much. Okay, today we have a hearing for the following board actions. Preliminary adoption, of the National Ambient Air Quality Standards References Rule and the Public Water Supply Construction Fees Rule. And then we'll have a short discussion of the air permitting program as well. So the rules being considered at today's meeting were included in board packets and are available for public inspection at the Office of Legal Counsel, 13th floor, Indiana Government Center North. The entire board packet is also available on IDEM's website at least 1 week prior to each board meeting. A written transcript of today's meeting will be made. The transcript and any written submissions will be open for public inspection at the Office of Legal Counsel. A copy of the transcript will be posted on the rules page of the agency website when it becomes available. If you wish to testify in any of today's hearings, you will need to submit your request to comment. Please fill out a comment card and give it to Carla Kendrick at the sign-in table. And for those of you online, there's a form that you can fill out. We will respectfully limit comments to 4 minutes. Time will be enforced. I'd like to swear the court reporter. Will the official reporter for the cause please stand, raise your right hand, and state your name?
Lindy Meyer.
Do you solemnly affirm that you will keep complete and true notes of all that transpires and prepare a transcript thereof and faithfully perform all duties imposed upon you as an official reporter of the state of Indiana?
Yes.
Thank you. We will move to the public hearing on preliminary adoption of the NAAQS references rule. This is a public hearing before the Environmental Rules Board of the state of Indiana concerning this rule. I will now introduce Exhibit A, the proposed rule, into the record of the hearing, and Keelan Walsh will present the rule.
Good afternoon, members of the board. I'm Keelan Walsh with the Rules Development Section of the Office of Legal Counsel, and I'm going to present the NAAQS Attainment Status References Update, LSA number 26-31 for your consideration. US EPA sets the NAAQS for 6 common and widespread criteria air pollutants. When US EPA issues a new or revised standard, it issues air quality designations determining which areas of the country are or are not meeting the NAAQS based on air quality data and any state recommendations. US EPA maintains lists of these designations at 40 CFR 81. Indiana's designations, broken down by county and smaller subdivisions where necessary, are listed at 40 CFR 81.315. On July 1st, 2023, Public Law 25-2023 was codified at IC 13-17-3-14. It provides any federal regulation adopting or amending a NAAQS designation for any area in Indiana is effective and enforceable upon the effective date of the federal regulation. Previously, Indiana's rules maintained NAAQS designation tables at 326 IAC 1-4, and IDEM individually updated each county for each criteria pollutant as their statuses changed or the federal regulations were updated. Indiana's codification of these tables was more informative than substantive. As I mentioned, US EPA sets the NAAQS and regulated designations, and Indiana's rules merely reiterated the information in the federal designation tables. On October 9, 2024, a final rule repealed 326 IAC 1-4 and removed the NAAQS attainment status tables from the state rules, which had become unnecessary due to IC 13-17-3-14. To avoid any potential confusion about where to find current NAAQS designations, this rulemaking proposes to add a new rule at 326 IAC 1-4.1 that incorporates by reference 40 CFR 81.315. Additionally, this rulemaking corrects references to repealed rules and language indicating that the board designates NAAQS attainment areas. At 326 IAC 1-2 and 326 IAC 6-5, language indicating that the board makes NAAQS designations is being corrected to point to the federal NAAQS designations. Updates to these citations in Title 326 will ensure that the federal attainment designation statuses of all Indiana counties are clearly referenced in state rules and will maintain consistency between state and federal regulations. For purposes of convenience, item program staff continues to maintain a separate compilation of the attainment status designations for all counties in Indiana, including federal amendments to these designations, and it is posted for public review on the Office of Air Quality Air Programs webpage. And finally, this rulemaking proposes to incorporate by reference the NACs rather than repeat them in 326 IAC 1-3-4. And so I then respectfully request that the board preliminarily adopt this rule as presented, and program staff are available to answer any further questions.
Thank you, Keelan. I'm going to ask for any public commenters. We'll start with those here in person and then go virtually. Do we have any public commenters? No one in person. And how about online? Any online commenters?
We do not.
We do not. Okay. So thank you so much. And now we will proceed to the board consideration on the preliminary adoption of the NACS references rule. And I'm going to open it up for board discussion. Do we have any comments or questions about this scintillating rule?
I have a question, which
Yeah.
maybe it's a dumb question, reflecting my new life here on this board, but so we have a state rule we're adopting that's going to say that the federal rules apply, but the federal rules already apply regardless of what we say. So why are we adding this regulation?
And we're both adding and subtracting, as I noticed when I read it.
Right.
But maybe we should have Keelan just come back up and explain, why do we even have to do this? If we're subject to a federal NACS, now I know we have state implementation plan, but why do we have to do anything?
And because I raise this because as a lawyer, sometimes when we're litigating these things, we get into this real tangled, cross-reference here, but that gets updated. We cross-reference there, that gets updated, and it turns into this, when we all know, regardless of what Indiana says, the federal rules apply to us here. So help me understand, please.
Right, well, essentially what this comes down to is that the attainment statuses for those designations have been in our rules for years and years, and essentially just recognizing the need that they don't need to be there, to remove them and refer to just the federal, statuses. It's simply kind of a procedural thing, because for some,
But that's sort of what Brianna's saying, we don't really need it.
Right.
because-
Can we just delete it all?
Well,
Well,
that part, there's other parts too.
Right, yeah.
Right, yeah. We're repealing those designations within the rulemakings, and then we're also updating some other, sections of the rule to refer to the federal designation. So, yes, it will be repealed in our rules and just refer to the federal designation in case people need direction to that. If that helps.
Are there other comments or questions?
Yes, this is Dr. Alexandrovich online. Just to maybe answer Ms. Schroeder's question, it might also have to do with our delegation for the AIR program. Simply, we need to make sure that we adopt the attainment status and implement what needs to be to achieve attainment. That's kind of what I think, but I also have a comment regarding section 6-5-1 under the fugitive particulate rules, where you adopt the 40 CFR, but then if you look below that, this is page 7 of 9 in the rulemaking. It basically refers to what I believe are old PM non-attainment areas. So I think that whole section can probably be deleted. A source of fugitive particulate matter emissions located in non-attainment areas for particulate matter as designated under their 40 CFR, period, and then end of sentence, and delete the rest of that. Including like portion of Clark County, Du Bois County, Marion County, etc. I think that needs to go.
Okay, so ending it after the 40 CFR 81.315 and then deleting the rest.
Yes. Through Yeah.
Through just the end of that.
That's under section 1A. Yeah.
Okay, I can certainly bring that up to program staff. I don't know if they have any particular, insight into that, but,
Any heartburn from the program staff?
Yeah, because they're like portions of counties which were probably near power plants, which were when we were non-attainment for PM 2.5 at certain points. So I think it doesn't need to be there because any source has to control fugitive emissions.
I just want, I'm Susan Bevan, I'm in the Air Programs Branch. I was just gonna address, both of the topics that were brought up. The PM, non-attainment designations in 6-5-1, still exists in the SIP. We can reevaluate whether we need to take those out or not, but I think since TSP, even though we don't implement that standard anymore, there's still requirements as part of applicability for that whole section. So even though we implement PM 2.5, PM 10, that TSP stuff may still need to reside there, and we can evaluate that.
Well, are all fugitive TSP? Total
Yeah,
particulate?
with our fugitive, dust rules, relying on TSP standards, we would have to review all parts of Article 6 in our PM rules, not just this individual section. The only reason this 6-5-1 is in this rulemaking is because of that reference to, the federal non-attainment designations. But again, thank you for bringing up that, and we will evaluate that. And then back to the question from, Mrs. Schroeder on, why we actually have attainment designations in our rules when they already exist at the federal level. We also have state permitting rules, within those state permitting rules, we do modeling and different requirements apply based on your attainment status. And in those permitting rules, we reference, the non-attainment status. And instead of referencing, like having attainment status within our permitting rules, this new section 1-4.1-1, is our spot within our permitting rules. It's like, hey, if you're permitting in a non-attainment area, go look at this area and you can tell if you're what rules you're subject to. Hopefully that addresses sort of both those comments.
So it's not clear to me where we ended up on. Do you want to go back and redo that and come back to us, or do you want us to vote on what we have here?
I think we want you to vote on what you have here unless someone else wants to address that part, but, these, 1-4.1-1 needs to stay as it is. There's our referencing the federal rules. We need those non-attainment designations there to have a complete package. We can't, just have our rules with gaps in them. And then, we will look at 6-5, 6-5-1, but those are part of our TSP rules. Those need to stay as a complete package also.
Other questions, comments from the board?
Hand raised by Mr. Davis.
This Mr. Davidson online. Thanks for your patience, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate where you said, where did we end up there after all of that? Because Dr. Alexandrovich made some very specific comments, but when I studied this rule, I kind of felt like Ms. Schroeder did. So our work group is looking at this kind of stuff, right? EO 38, asking us to reduce what seems like some redundancy. I'm okay, it's a draft version of this, but would ask the staff to take the same spirit that we've been asked to reduce unnecessary duplicative efforts. And I get it. I know that these all feel like they're necessary, but where on the other hand, this looked like to me at first first thorough reading was this could be one of the targets of our get rid of a redundant rule. So just keep all that in mind in between now and the final version.
And this is sort of a cleanup rule to fix, a mistake that happened in the past somewhat. There was that public law, when we, like 4 or 5 years ago, we used to have every attainment designation listed in our rules, very cumbersome. You got 92 counties, you have 6 pollutants, and you're listing attainment, non-attainment, attainment. And every time EPA changed the designation, we had to go back into our rules and revise that. It took a lot of rulemaking. So public law came around and said, hey, you can attainment status with our effective the day, EPA designates that. So we removed in a rulemaking that Keithlin had mentioned maybe a year or so ago, 1-4-1. But now when you look at our permitting rules, it says you're permitted as attainment based on what's in 1-4-1. Either we can amend our permitting rules to say go to 81.315, or we can sort of have this placeholder 1-4 or 1-1. And so that's why we need this there, because of our permitting rules. Not because we're trying to replicate what's in the federal rules.
I appreciate that. I'm all for getting rid of the stuff that you're marking out. It was what Ms. Schroeder mentioned earlier, and I can see Commissioner's got his finger on the mic. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna add, I do think there's, delegated Clean Air Act stuff is belts and suspenders on belts and suspenders for both federal and state enforceability. So there is, I think, maybe a piece here that actually does dovetail with something that Billy mentioned that I think we'll be coming back to you all with in terms of an interim rule related to, in this case, fuel related provision in a couple of counties, where it's something that's in our state implementation plan, and sometimes you have to restate it in state rules, even though it's both state and federally enforceable. So I do think maybe some of these things extend some of the TSP provisions that apply to previous secondary PM non-attainment areas for total suspended particles, maybe in that same category where at times states have adopted on paper reductions to demonstrate reasonable further progress and things like that. So this may be in that category. I guess maybe one thing I was going to suggest is in light of the preliminary adoption, we'd be glad to maybe come back with a little bit more of a crosswalk, both for the work group efforts more broadly, but maybe also just to make sure that it's clear why this is in both state regulation and our state implementation plan and corresponds with the federal, because those 3 things are often have to be in place to make sure that you've got a delegated program. But we're happy to maybe take a closer look at the couple of issues that have been raised here and see is this absolutely necessary, and have some conversations with the EPA. Ultimately have to oversee that civil approval process if that does help.
So now let me suggest then, how we go forward then. It seems to me that there's parts of the stuff in here that the board is comfortable with, but then there's parts that we'd like to go further.
Right.
Take some more stuff out.
A whole
So
separate.
why don't we vote on the first part, and then you'll come back to us at some point and tell us whether you can take another whack at it.
Right, because this is noticed, to clean up references to the NAPs, not PM, TSP designations or anything like that. So this rulemaking, has all the background regulatory documents for that purpose. And if, as it mentions, we need to look at TSP designations or, other those things, then, rulemaking started for that purpose. And then maybe not just this section, but other sections will be opened along with that to clean it properly.
Other comments or questions? So do I have a motion to preliminarily adopt the rule as presented? Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you so much. We move to public hearing on preliminary adoption of the Public Water Supply Construction Fees Rule. This is a public hearing before the Environmental Rules Board of the state of Indiana, and we're looking at the fees rule. I will now introduce Exhibit B, the proposed rule, into the record of the hearing, and Keelan will come back and join us and present this rule.
I am back in action once again. Good afternoon, and I am here now to present the Public Water Supply Construction Fees Rule, LSA number 26-47 for your consideration. The Safe Drinking Water Act was enacted by Congress in 1974 to protect drinking water quality across the nation by establishing minimum standards to protect tap water. The act requires all owners and operators of public systems or PWSs to comply with these standards. Public water systems to comply with these standards. To ensure compliance and in accordance with IC 13-18-16, Ivan's drinking water permit section regulates the construction of PWSs under the PWS construction permits rule at 327 IAC 8-3. Specifically, the requirements at 327 IAC 8-3-2 require all PWSs to submit a drinking water construction permit application to item before the construction, installation, or modification of any facility, equipment, or device. All PWSs are required to pay an associated permit fee when submitting a construction permit application unless they are excluded from the payment of this fee under 327 IAC 8-3-7. Currently, 5 categories of PWS sources are listed under the fee exemption under 327 IAC 8-3-7, including nonprofit organizations. However, all 5 categories must also be a governmental entity to qualify. Churches, most of which operate as nonprofit organizations, are not currently eligible for the exemption. As a result, small churches in particular face the financial burden when required to pay PWS construction permits. This rulemaking was initiated from a request by a local church and was supported by Representative Lawson, and Ivan's initial discussions with him concerning exemptions for small churches formed the basis of this rule. Accordingly, the purpose of this rulemaking is to add a new exemption category under 327 IAC 8-3-7 for nonprofit religious organizations while maintaining the existing category of nonprofit organizations that are also governmental entities. I respectfully request that the board preliminarily adopt this rule as presented, and program staff are available to answer any other questions.
Thank you so much. Do we have any in-person or online commenters?
Yes, sir.
Oh, we do. Okay. Okay, Ethan Lawson.
Thank you, Chairman Graham, members of the board, IDM staff and team. Appreciate giving me just a few moments to talk about this rule, which started, the conversation started about 1.5 years ago with a constituent who came to me with a very specific issue. And, I think in these roles, representing my neighbors in Hancock and Madison counties as a state representative, there's nothing more rewarding than when a neighbor brings you a problem. And, you see that as an opportunity, and then we can work collaboratively together to find a solution that benefits not just that particular person, but people across my district and perhaps across the state as well. But I know you guys do that every day here, and I'm only seeing a very small part of that in attending this meeting. But I want to give you and the IDM team credit for doing so. So as was mentioned, currently if a small community church such as the one in my district has a well for drinking water and it fails, that's already a very expensive and unplanned thing, right? And so they have that $860 permit fee that's valid for a year. In some cases, they might go ahead and start to procure that permit in case the well is going to fail again, just because that's not always a given. And then they might have ongoing fees, this kind of insurance, in order to make sure that they can quickly replace that well if it does fail. And as was noted, nonprofit government organizations are already exempt from paying that fee. And this new rule would make churches and nonprofit religious institutions exempt as well. I'd like to thank Ronald Smouse, who couldn't be here today, but was a constituent from church in my district who came to me with this problem. And I met with IDM staff in December of 2024, prior to the legislative session where I was considering whether to introduce legislation. And they were very pragmatic and eager to find a solution, and started the ball rolling on this rule change. And so I appreciate that if this rule is adopted, churches and nonprofit religious organizations will be exempt from paying that fee if they apply for that permit item. I think that's really creative problem solving from a state agency and such as yourself, and would have statewide positive impact. So I'd like to thank again, Chairman Graham, members of the board here, and online, Director Woods, Josh Bain, the team at IDEM, for your collaboration over the last year and a half to get to today. And I thank everyone who's had a hand in helping our neighbors with this proposed new rule. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have other public commenters in person? Do we have any public commenters online? Not online. Okay, we'll move to board consideration. And the question is for board members. Do you have questions or comments about the matter? Yes.
There are not-for-profit organizations that are not religious organizations that would fall into this category. And if so, shouldn't we exempt them as well?
Maybe we should have item staff member field that one.
We do not have any other exemptions for nonprofits other than, what was set out in the rule, government agencies and now churches.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear enough. Are there other not-for-profit organizations that would be required to get a permit still?
If they are public water supply systems.
Okay. All right, I understand the designation. Thank you.
Other comments or questions from the board?
Liz Melvin, I'm the section chief for our drinking water construction permitting section.
I have what may be a naive question, but the way I listen to it, there's a stipulation that has to be a governmental entity. And obviously small churches are not governmental entities, so that this is a work around that, sounds like. And is that governmental entity stipulation, is that in a statute or is that in an item rule, was my question?
It is in rule.
So our alternative solution would be to just work on that rule, but you're just gonna write a new rule that runs around it, basically, right?
Well, we're altering a rule to,
Okay.
yes,
Okay, but it's good news that it's not a statute.
yes,
Yeah,
makes it easier, you're correct.
I hope that question was clear. But anyway, other comments and questions? Okay, so we will move to, learn a motion actually to, move forward with this rule.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? And any opposed?
I'm gonna abstain from this. This is Joanne Alexandrovich. We've been looking at permit fees and particularly in the water division. And I don't have anything against churches, but I'm not sure I agree with any of the exemptions, so I'm gonna abstain for now.
Was it that voted for nay?
Who was that, Billy? Alexandrovich.
No, there was someone before her.
Oh,
Someone voted no.
It might have been a delay on.
I thought it was a delay.
I think it was a delay. Hey, you want to do it again? That'd be better.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna ask for all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Yes,
Got it? Okay. So it does pass with one abstention. Okay, we will now move to non-rule actions. First of all, I just wanted to remind everyone, we have two work groups of the board operating right now, one on fee reform and one on burden reduction from rules. And we're not going to give reports today on those subjects, but hopefully either in the summer or the fall, we will come back and give a more detailed update on how we're doing. We're not quite ready in either of the two to be coming forward with our packages Okay, and then the second item, Billy, we do have a little complication on this presentation. Can you give us an update on what happened and what you would like us to proceed?
The staff member that was going to present the air quality report is out today. There is a report in your packets, and if you have any questions, we do have the Assistant Commissioner, Matt Stuckey, here who can help answer any questions.
Okay, so based upon the board members' review prior to the meeting, did you develop any questions or comments you want on this? And if so, we have someone here who can answer those questions or comments. Okay. So I'll move to other matters. Open forum, is there anyone who wishes to address the board today? Okay, next meeting of the Environmental Rules Board is tentatively set for July 9th, 2026 at 1:30 p.m. in this conference room, Indiana Government Center South. The meeting date is tentative, subject to change, and we'll keep everyone updated when that is confirmed or another date is chosen. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That was a late eye. I could tell by the tones. Would you like me to do it again, sir? No. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Have a delightful day on this beautiful spring of sunshine.